Thank you, Peggy. Hi, everyone. I'm Tina Schneider, and I'm here with Barbara Talent. And we're the co-founders of Livebinders, and we run this wonderful webinar with Dean Mantz, who is not able to make it today. He might be able to drop in, but he had a conflicting schedule. But we normally do these knowledge-sharing webinars once a month. We try to cover topics that are of interest to teachers, and we see a lot of activity on our site. And one in particular that's been going on lately is ePortfolios. So we're trying to find out what you need from us in terms of an ePortfolio application. We're trying to find out why it's so interesting and why it's something that you guys are really looking into for education. So I've got some questions for you. I want us to have some conversations, some dialogues, and I'm also going to share some example binders of students and teachers who've been using the LiveBinder platform to do either personal or work-related or school-related portfolios. Now, Dean was going to run the session here because he actually teaches a pre-service course at the university where he's at. But I am going to take over for him until if he can actually join us. So before I begin, let me ask this question. How many of you are using portfolios in your school? And that would be a yes or no, that you can use your polling. Okay, so I've got people who are using them for themselves but not for school. And then I've also got the school is using them, but teachers not using them either in your classroom or for yourself. I'm going to take that. So I've got some of you that are using them, some of you that aren't, and in different scenarios. Okay, that's very interesting. Of those portfolios, can you tell me, raise your hand if you are using them digitally. So you've got some kind of a wiki page, or you're using Livebinders, or you're using some electronic method. So I guess you have to hit clear. Do I need to hit clear, Peggy? I guess I do, right? Oh, it looks like it's all clear. Okay. So if you could do that again, let me know how many of you are doing digital portfolios. So I've got 2, if you're doing them at all. Are any of you doing the traditional paper portfolio? I've got a no there. And I've got some notes. So I've got a couple of you using paper, is that right? So it looks like it's a mixture of like OneNote, or you're using paper at school, and maybe one of you as a teacher is using some kind of software. Okay, well that definitely gives us a perspective on how we're going to move forward. So let me go into the binder here, and let me do application sharing. And let's talk about what ePortfolio means to you. What do you think of when you think of an ePortfolio? And I think that's probably the most important question to ask yourself is what does an ePortfolio mean to you and to your students? Now, Dean has a philosophy here that it's really, you're telling a story. And it's either a story that is about the progress that you're making or where you've been, or it could be, you know, here's the best that I've done throughout either my career or throughout what I've done at school. So the first thing to think about is a portfolio that is telling your story. And you have to, I guess, kind of pick what kind of a story you want it to tell. So this is something that he does with his students, and he provides all these resources which are available to you. This binder here, by the way, is something that you can take with you and look over on your own time with all these different resources. So here's a worksheet that he goes through to talk about what is a portfolio, who is the portfolio being created for, so understanding who your audience is. You know, it could be just parents, right? If it's a kid creating their portfolio that goes to their parents, or it could be obviously for their teacher. It could be a teacher creating a portfolio like a resume, so it's for work-related purposes. It could just be for you to keep track of your work. And then the other thing to think about that I thought was interesting was the self-assessment portfolios. So for a dean, there are three key components, or components of a portfolio. There's the ability to track growth over time. How much progress have I made over time? So for example, there are some cases where we've seen schools say we want to track kids who are learning how to read, learning how to write, learning how to do math skills, and we don't want to have to rely on testing. So we definitely want to have portfolios that the kids can take with them and to show their work. So in one tab you might say, here's when I learned how to write in kindergarten, and then again in first, second, third grade, all the way up through high school. So it can show that there's definitely been some kind of a growth in their writing skills. And then there's also the component of showcase. So here's the work that I've done, but maybe I need some help in this area. So you're kind of keeping track of where a student's particular skills need work at, and then you set a kind of a goal for the kid or the student as to, you know, how am I going to improve in this math area, or how am I going to improve in the writing. And then there's the other one where it's more collaborative, which is evaluation. So you have the student's work and you work with the student within the portfolio to identify strengths and weaknesses and then track their growth. So here he wanted to bring up a binder that was done by a high school student, and what he thought was interesting with the Pecha Kucha project was the student did a video, and we won't wait for the video to load here, of himself talking about his goals. And then in this particular tab, he's given the opportunity to reflect on his video, on his goal writing process. So he thought that that was a very interesting way to use portfolios to kind of reflect what your goals or what your writing is, and then to go back and actually use the binder again or your portfolio to have a self-assessment about the progress that you've made. Are there any questions so far? Because I am not monitoring the screen while I'm up here in the browser. Let me double check here.
There haven't been any questions thus far. People have just been chatting about ePortfolios and how they would use them.
Okay. So back to Dean's talk about storytelling and portfolios here. So he wants to stress that it's really not just a notebook that you kind of jot down notes. It's really about the end product and the process of organizing your growth and achievement. So he had 3 questions that he thought that the portfolio creator should keep in mind, whether you're a teacher or a student, whether you're doing this for yourself, is what kinds of reflective questions would you ask the students to address? So I guess that would mean, you know, you're asking the student, where do you want to be in the next year or in the next 2 years, or if you're a high school student, where do you want to be when you graduate from high school? 2, what kinds of evidence or learning outcomes would be most useful? So those are the kinds of things that you would put into an ePortfolio. And then how would you engage students in collaboration and mentoring process? And I have some great examples of binders that show a collaboration between student and teacher and other teachers and students among themselves. So I'm going to get into that pretty quickly here, although Dean had a great example of one of his pre-service students having finished an ePortfolio for their class. They were asked to write a blog about the experience, which is here, and then also submit their ePortfolio, which in this particular case was a live binder that the student had embedded into the blog page where they wrote about their summary for that particular class. So you can see how the LiveBinder can be embedded, and you click on different tabs, and it will to show all the work that she's done. There's another example here. Michael DeWitt's a little bit more colorful binder that he embedded into the page. So he's got his lesson plans that he created, he's got his social media, and different media in it for his ePortfolio. Okay, so if we don't have any questions, I'm going to go into some example binders here. And the last point that Dean had brought up, which I thought was interesting, is how do you work with the student as a teacher in building a portfolio project? So one of my favorite binders that was done for a high school project involved groups of high school juniors who were given different topics at their school. So this one in particular was, what would you do? And the topic is gossip. They had ones like food in the cafeteria, parking situation, bullying. They had all different topics. And this particular group had a really nice way of organizing all the material for this research project. And in the first tab, you see here under suggestions, this is the place where the teacher would interact with the students. So this is the teacher's name. She has a printout that all of the students would load into their binders telling the objective of the project. And I think on a weekly basis or on a bi-weekly basis, the teacher would log into their binder and write down comments about the work that they're doing. So here you could see one of the last pieces of information on their final project. I had been monitoring this binder for a little while, so I could see the progression of comments that were written in them, and this was the final comment. But just to show you quickly, the students had created a title page with their names in there. They had uploaded a planning chart, so the teacher had provided them with a template, organizing what was going to be their objective, their goals, their target audience. So they had to fill in this part of the little table and then upload it into their binder. Then they were supposed to go out there and conduct surveys. So to put their surveys together, they created subtabs and uploaded the different survey results. And so it looks like they did online surveys with a group of students at school, and they were able to get a download version and then upload it into the binder and organize it by the different questions. And then the other thing they did was they did video interviews. So they had uploaded them into YouTube and then wrote a little text describing the interview process that they went through with that particular student or teacher. And then they cited their sources, which I thought was pretty interesting. Very well organized. They had secondary sources and then other works that they cited. So here's an example of a really nice group project binder where they wanted to use it as a portfolio for their whole research project. And it was one that was not only collaborative with the students but also with the teacher. So the teacher could regularly check their binder, make sure they were on the right track, and make suggestions on how they could work on it further. Hello, Mike. We'll give Mike a second to get his microphone going. So, so you've got an example of a group project ePortfolio, but you can also see where this could be just a student's senior project or student portfolio. Hello.
All right, I'm in. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Mike.
How are you?
So I invited Mike Fisher to join us. He's a curriculum specialist, and he works a lot with schools and the Common Core requirements, and he's also very familiar with ePortfolio. So I thought if he could take some of his precious time, he has a newborn baby at home, and share with us some ideas about why ePortfolios are so important and how they're being used and why digital, we'd really appreciate it. So Mike, would you like to do that right now?
Sure. Peggy says I'm getting a little feedback. I turned the microphone down just a little bit. Is that better?
I can barely hear you, actually.
Okay, let's turn it up a little bit. I'm coming to you live from my laundry room, so that might be one of the issues.
You sound a little bit better. I remember those days.
I've got a baby in one hand, and I've got two 6-year-olds that are running in and out to see what I'm doing. As far as the portfolios, I'm guessing that you've already put up some of the live binders that are available, and I'm sure that people have already noticed that there are a couple of different ways that you can use the binders and other digital tools to do portfolio development online, both for process and for product. The process ones, I personally think, are the most useful for students because once they're doing this stuff online and they change the audience that they have, whether it's just the students in their room, we're moving it beyond just the teacher being the audience, and they get to shape their work by the process of amplification. And what I mean by that is getting it out to the masses, changing the audience so that they have different perspectives than they would not normally have on their work, which I think is really going to be an important skill as we go forward into the future, and it's going to represent a lot of what modern learning practice is going to entail, this notion of just getting it out to the world. So
what you're saying is it's more than just a classroom document now. It's your world document. The audience is...
that, and you're creating opportunities for kids to have these portfolios to give evidence of their college and career readiness when they're older. You know, you can go to college and talk about your achievements, or you can, you know, go to a college and share your achievements because they're online and they're easy to access. So, I mean, or you could do the same thing for a job. It's like you're building a resume now from kindergarten right on up, which I think is pretty cool. But then the other ones are the product-oriented ones that are more about just getting to a particular point after the learning has happened. And those have their use as well, especially for teachers and students who are just getting on board with portfolio documentation. But I really think the process ones are the way to go because they teach kids to shape the learning and not just be focused on the product.
So we were just going over, Dean also mentioned that. So one was there's the portfolio that's your best of, right, which you're talking about, the finished product. And then there's the one that's the progress, the showing the growth, and then evaluating that as well.
Even the best of, I think, could be part process because one of the big key components here is reflection. And David Nicodula, who was a colleague of mine on the Curriculum 21 faculty, he wrote one of the chapters in Curriculum 21 about portfolio assessment, not specifically using digital tools, but he did mention some. But he talks a lot about this reflective component being the biggest piece of what a portfolio is going to do for students, and that best of model that Dean mentioned. If you do the reflection part really well, then the kids have to articulate why that represents their best work. And there's a lot of power in that because then they're self-assessing, which is also part of the process of learning, but they're learning from themselves.
I see, yeah. It's a confidence builder. It's a talking point from strength.
I'm missing some of the chat here. Did somebody have a question?
Yes, Aubrey had a great question about how do you grade an ePortfolio?
It would be rubrics. And they're rubrics that can be, I think it would be really beneficial for them to be built by the teacher and the students together. But a lot of times the teacher builds the rubrics. And one of the things that happens when we go in and work with teachers that have built rubrics is to make sure that we're assessing the learning and not just like behaviors, like it was creative or it was neat or it was pretty. We want to make sure that we're assessing the actual learning that we're intending for the kids to show us when they share the portfolio.
some examples where the
That
teacher
helps.
puts right in the binder the rubrics for how they're going to be graded on their portfolio or their project?
Yeah, well, I think that's an important component because then the kids are in consideration of the rubric the entire time they're working versus doing the work and then trying to compare it to the rubric at the end. I think the more thoughtful they are of the rubric and the more they understand it throughout the process, the better work they're going to do all along.
Well, I was going to try to give some examples of what exactly you're talking about. Gene looks like he just jumped in, and he might want to take over as well or join in on the conversation. We just find it really interesting that ePortfolios now seems to be really of interest to a lot of our users, not just for themselves doing their own work and highlighting their own work or progress, let's say for a pre-service teacher, but also for the kids. We're used to seeing high school, but now, like you said, they're starting at a younger age, from kindergarten on up. So I was talking to Dean, and maybe you can answer this. Is this being driven by things like Common Core or the nets? And I know Julia's from New Zealand, so I'm not sure how she's affected by this or if that's even part of their dialogue right now. But it seems to be pretty common right here.
I think it's more of a function of just modern learning practice, availability of tools and resources, figuring out new ways to use the resources that we have. I mean, think about it. When you first launched livebinders and I first started using it and we started having conversations, like I was using it just to, you know, collect things at a very basic level, and we figured out really quick that it could do, the service could do different things, and then we had suggestions about other things that could potentially be done. And the version of livebinders that's online now is extremely more capable of handling all different types of things versus the first version. And it's making it really cool for the way that people are using it and being creative about its usage.
So you're talking about embedding certain kinds of tools that help facilitate that, like the interactive sites, like the Today's Meet kind of thing?
Well, stuff like that, but I'm thinking about like a teacher that may have logged on a couple years ago and used it just to collect pictures of animals and then decided, you know what, this could be my resume, and started putting in, you know, accomplishments and achievements that they've had with their students and examples of student work, and creating their own sort of portfolio, writing their own reflections about their professional practice, or using this to document evidence of professional practice for things like a teacher evaluation rubric, like Charlotte Danielson's rubrics or Marzano's rubrics. Teachers are doing that now and using it for multiple purposes.
I see. So using the ePortfolio format more than just like a resume or your portfolio. It's really whatever you need it for. Yeah, they're starting to see that picture. Right. I'm sorry?
I just said to document, to share, to reflect on, and have all these components in one spot, but also be able to share that with others for the sake of, you know, just sharing your professional practice, or if you wanted to get a new job, perhaps in a place that didn't do Common Core. No, I'm kidding.
What does that mean?
The Common Core is good. It's all the teacher evaluation and the minutiae around it that people are having trouble with.
Does that turn out to be very time-consuming?
Well, it's not so much time-consuming as just insulting.
Okay.
States still have some work to do, and that's probably its own webinar.
Yeah. All right, well, we've got some interesting questions here. Mike, did you want to add anything further?
I'm just looking.
I really appreciate you coming in and
right here before I have to jump back out. But Debbie wrote that for World Languages, we need a way for students to share and show speaking samples along with the writing. So something that accommodates audio and video files is great. So livebinders does that. There are several tools. I worked with a foreign language teacher that used Voki to record her students speaking. They got to create their own avatars. It was really cool. and then she published those on her website. But you could easily publish those into the LiveBinder. But there are other tools. I just downloaded one for the iPad called Telegami, and you can do the same thing with it. You create an avatar, you can put in a background image, you've got 30 seconds speaking time, but then you can create a movie on the iPad that you can upload to YouTube, and once it's in YouTube, you can embed it right into the binder. So you could have a binder full of like listening and speaking activities that your students have done that demonstrate their command of a language that they're learning. Hey, did I lose the audio?
You know why?
I hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
Okay.
You lost me because I had my mic on mute. I have a cough I'm fighting, so I keep hitting the mute button. I was saying that we do have great foreign language binders that I will add to this example binder shelf for you guys to take a look at. I did not put them in here. But it seems like we're going back to all the different ways that we can use a portfolio to reflect work and curriculum going on in the classroom. It doesn't necessarily have to be a finished product. From what I remember a portfolio meaning when I was a kid, or even just 10 years ago, 5 years ago.
So I've got, I'm sure you've shared it already, but I have a binder in there that's just about portfolio assessment, and actually there's some stuff in there from David Nicodula that will give you some more examples. And if you're a member of ASCD, you can actually access Curriculum 21 for free when you log in, and you can read his chapter online if you want to know more about it. So it was a member benefit book a couple years ago, but you still can access it online for free. So I'm going to cut out. We have 4 children in our house tonight. 2 of them just left. They wanted to see what the buzz was in the laundry room. So see what a webinar was like. Thank you for inviting me in. Hopefully the next time I will be able to spend the whole hour with you.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike. We really appreciate it. Big hugs and kisses to your little ones.
All right. Thanks a lot. Y'all take care.
All right.
Have a good night and a good conversation.
Thanks so much. We really appreciate it, Mike. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hi, Dean.
Okay. There. Now hopefully everybody can hear me.
I can hear you. Hello. Welcome. I went through your presentation probably not as well as you would have, and I was actually working through some binder examples because it looks like we have some new users here who are trying to figure out what can you put in a binder that's creative and different, and what are some of the other ways that you can use binders. So I'm going to pass the mic on to you if you want to have something to say about your take on ePortfolios and how, and I did show how the couple of the students embedded their ePortfolio binders on the blog page.
Okay.
I did show.
Did you bring up the one that we talked about with the kid doing the Pechakucha presentation, his ePortfolio?
I did.
Okay. Well, if you want to bring that back up, I can kind of touch on it because of a question how Debbie had put in there about language examples and how you can kind of do some stuff there.
Okay. I have it right here. I can bring him up full screen, actually.
Yep. There's the big project. All right. Well, Tina probably had touched on this from a conversation she and I had earlier in Google Plus today because of my crazy schedule tonight. But I want you to kind of stop and think, and this goes back to my story chaser stuff. Peggy, you'll understand that. Keep in mind when your students or yourself is creating a portfolio, you want to tell a story. You want to tell a story about yourself, your skill set, what you're learning. Don't be afraid to touch on your weaknesses, where you feel that you need to even improve on. And again, you're going to show growth but you could also talk about the best of. So those are a couple different approaches to think about it, but keep in mind the main theme that you want to think of when you're developing your ePortfolio is you're trying to tell a story. And it's a story that convinces people, a message. It's a story that you're trying to convince them that you're the best candidate for something. So time to polish up on your storytelling skills. Now, the thing I wanted to point out in this one on the big project, he has a tab there. You'll see where it's PechaKucha. Now, is everybody familiar with a PechaKucha presentation? Okay, we got to explain it in there from Peggy. PechaKucha presentation is basically where you've got 20 slides, 20 seconds per slide, so you know exactly how long your presentation or your speech is limited to. And trust me, it's very nerve-wracking when you're trying to tell a story using images and you got 20 seconds a slide and you know the time's going and you're up in front of a crowd. So that's a PechaKucha design, and it actually started over in Asia by a bunch of architects that would get together, you know, in the coffee shops and talk about designs and their favorite architects or architectural designs, and that's just how it's evolved. And it's a very interesting approach. But in this case, what the student has done is he has embed his PechaKucha presentation, and then on the next tab, he does a self-reflection. He goes back and evaluates his own presentation. And then there's a sign of you recognizing your own weaknesses and being honest and open about it. And, you know, just basically the way I tell my students is it's a way that you are showing you're human. You know you'll make mistakes, but you also know how to improve on it. And you can give yourself that same feedback and not feel like you're getting nothing but red ink from the teacher. And that also, the point I'm trying to make here also is it tells a story to those, let's say you're applying for a teaching job, since I work with the pre-service students also at Sterling College. It shows those administrators that you are willing to listen to feedback and looking for ways to improve yourself. Now, maybe what you would do is if you have an ePortfolio and you're applying for a photography job or a performing arts job, you may put those video clips or still pictures in there, and then to the side, you might just put notes talking about this picture was taken at this time, or maybe I should have maybe looked from a different angle or used a different lens. But it allows people to also go, you know what, I've made those mistakes, but I hadn't thought of that perspective before. So those are some other things that are benefits for putting those self-reflections and evaluating yourself in your portfolio. Now you'll notice also Peggy put up the 3 questions that I'd sent out to in the email. Now this comes from another resource that I shared with Tina and them, and I'm trying to see if it's on the screen there, and I'll have you bring it up.
Is it 3 key components or components of the portfolio? Is it, does everybody see the 3 key components?
Go ahead. Growth,
showcase, evaluation. Is that the one?
Yeah, it's that PDF, this PDF link that I sent.
Oh, okay. It's in
I
here.
had linked in there.
The Idea Center?
Okay.
Here we go.
Yes, that's it, the Idea Center. This Idea Center, this is a free PDF that you can go get. But what John brings up in here are these 3 great questions, and I kind of like these as guiding questions when you sit down and have those unofficial visits with your students as they're working on their portfolios. And that's, what kind of reflective questions do you want to ask students to address? Or, in this case, what are those reflective questions that you, yourself, the student, want to ask? Maybe a professional, you know, and then what kinds of evidence? So when you're looking at those, reflecting back on those questions, what evidence from your work can you use to answer and support your answer to those questions? And then finally, the reason we talk about the engaged students in the collaboration is those of you that are new to livebinders, those of you who are veterans, livebinders has a collaboration piece where multiple people can contribute to a single binder. So maybe you could take on the role as being a history teacher. You can have a couple kids researching a historical person, but maybe those students, even though they're both researching the same person, one of it takes the professional life of that historical figure, the other one takes the personal life of that historical figure. And you're combining resources and you're trying to develop a portfolio. So for example, let's take George Washington. I could have student A do the professional side of George Washington, the student B take the personal side, and it's a portfolio for why we should elect him President of the United States. So that gives you a little different twist and a whole different perspective on it to get the students to understand a portfolio before really diving into their own portfolio. So
yeah,
that
that's
kind
a
of
good
gives
point.
you another perspective to that.
Yeah, it kind of it's a good way to get the teacher's head around what a portfolio could be. You're collaborating together, and then you can, as you learn how to build together in the one binder or the portfolio, you take it to the next level.
And you know what really also helps with that too is you have critical thinking. You have to analyze, evaluate. So here we're talking higher order blooms. We're using technology to find the information, but you're still having to use everyday skills to address the issue. So that gives you kind of an example of an integrated lesson. The focus is not using the technology, but it's determining what resources I could use to pull out the best information on somebody or yourself, and then you try to sell yourself to general public.
On that note,
Right.
Should I go into the different shelves then and take a look at
examples? If you want, you could bring up, did you put my portfolio shelf in there?
Yes, it's right here.
Okay.
Just tell me what you want me to click on.
Okay. Go to the Bueller one, the Bueller High School one, and I'll kind of touch on this.
Put it in present mode here. Okay.
Okay.
We are actually
Okay. Now, for those of you that are looking at this, let me give you an understanding. This is a high school binder template. And Rosemary Miller, a friend of mine that we introduced livebinders to, who was also a member of the big group that collaborated on a binder that I was kind of referring to, what they've developed is all of their seniors have to do an ePortfolio. And in this case, they chose to go with the livebinders. What you see here is the first tab is instructions with sub-tabs on general information. You could go to what they're talking about there under setup instructions. What they've done is given the students so they could do this on their own time and use class time to do the research. It basically gives them, here's how you create your account, here's how you move stuff around. So it's like a tutorial thing. But what you'll notice here is the first tab, instructions, has different sub-tabs providing additional instructions, but then the rest of the tabs are simply blank. So that way the students can copy this portfolio, because that's another really nice thing with all of the portfolios. You can make it public and copy, or tell it nobody can copy it. Well, they set it to be copy. The students can copy it into their own account, and then have the instruction in the guidance tabs, and then they complete the rest of the tabs. So that's what's really nice about that.
So you're saying in the instructions tab, they're going to find all what they need to do. And then
Exactly.
you go to the title, it's going to be blank, language arts. That's all going to be blank because that's what they have to fill in.
Exactly.
So this really is a template for them, for their ePortfolio.
Right.
And as I'm showing up here, you can make a copy of this. A student, let's pretend we're the student. We click on copy. It's now in our account. And I can then go and edit this binder. And if I ever forget what I'm supposed to do, I just click on the instruction tabs, and it's all right here.
Exactly. And that's exactly right, Aubrey, that it's a great way to help, especially if the students are not familiar with it and it's new to them, give them that chance to copy it. And like I said earlier, you know, you might create a binder and have them copy it, and you set it up as a template for them researching information to solve an open-ended question. Or, you know, think of project-based learning. You guys have an essential question. Well, the essential question's there, and then they copy the binder, and as they're doing their research, they're organizing it and putting it all in there like that. So, you know, there's a lot of ways to do that.
Yeah, I don't have this in the binder shelf, but I can add it. We've even had a middle school teacher try to teach 8th graders how to organize for a research project. He created a Cold War binder, and in each tab he literally said, okay, in this tab you will, you know, erase my text and you will put in 3 resources that you will research on this topic. So it's, even though it's very much hand-holding, as the kids are working through their binder, they're actually learning how to organize all their research material. And that's something that you can't do with paper. You can't stand there and say, okay, take this and put it there. In the digital world, they have that binder there with all the instructions or portfolio.
Now, Tina, if you would you go into edit mode and bring up the binder properties for me, please? I'm going to walk them through a question.
Okay. I'm going to get out of this binder because it can be very confusing. So let me go to edit mode. I'm now switching from play mode of this how to use portfolios to edit mode, as Dean suggested. Okay.
Okay. Now
you can go to me to do.
They're wanting to know how to make it a collaborative binder.
Okay.
That was their question.
So, all right. So up here under Add, you click on Add Collaborator, and you the only people who can be collaborators are people who have livebinders accounts, obviously. And to prevent spam, we don't have you put their username in here. We have you put the email address that they signed up with. So put down, if I wanted Dean to collaborate with me on this. Actually, Dean, you don't have a very easy email address, but let's say, well, here we go. I have Talent and I have Dana on here. So here are their email addresses, and they are current collaborators. So you would add the email address that's in their livebinders account. You click Add, and it would get added. What's your address, Dean?
It's probably the baseball bats. Yeah, baseballbats.dean@gmail.com.
Bats with a Z, right? No?
No. Bat S. Yeah. baseballbats.dean@gmail.com.
Okay. So when I click Add, this binder is now going to show up on Dean's collaborators shelf. It automatically goes straight to his collaborations shelf. I can send an email to him if I want, although in this presentation mode, I'm not gonna do that.
Right. Now, if you
to remove him, I can just select and hit remove.
Yeah. Now, if you want to go back to like my shelf.
Oh, okay.
Or your shelf, it doesn't matter. I was just going to point something out.
Okay. The dashboard?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine right there.
Okay.
Okay. Now, one question, like Kim pointed out, is when you copy a binder, you will not see it updated. Now, if you add a binder to your shelf, and Tina could demo that here in a moment, anytime somebody updates their binder, like what you see here where it says all my binders and it says updated, if you have added it to a shelf, it will say updated anytime they update the binder. That way you know they may have edited, made some kind of adjustment to it, whether it's added stuff to it, removed stuff from it, it's there. Whereas if you see copy, down underneath the title of a binder in the shelf, it will say copy of, like right here, yeah. You see where it says copy of. Well, that means you've made a copy just like on a Xerox machine. You're not going to see changes.
Yeah, so that's the template mode. So if you wanted to use your binder for your students to use as a template, they would make a copy. They would have the exact replication of it. But if you were to change that original binder, they wouldn't see that because it's not a connection to it. It's a copy of. So for example, I created this shelf here called ePortfolios. This is the shelf that I'm sharing with you guys in the binder. So I have free Friday webinar links and resources. This belongs to Shelley Terrell. She creates great portfolios for her, I guess she does consultation. This is another one here. So I have this on the shelf, but I can see that she's updated it. So now I have the latest and greatest from her. Even though it's not my binder, it's not a copy of it. I just want to be able to check it from time to time. So if you're creating a binder with homework assignments and you want your kids to see, when you've updated that binder, you can ask them to add it to a homework shelf in their account. And then they will always be able to see the latest and greatest. You don't have to keep sending emails. They can just look at your binder that's sitting on their shelf that they call homework.
Now, did you show them my portfolio yet?
No, let me open up Dean's portfolio.
A comment that, like Peggy said in here about Shelley's thing, brought it up, so I was going to also kind of touch on some stuff that goes along with it. Now, one thing also to keep in mind when you are doing portfolios, since that's our topic, is you'll notice on the ones that Tina was showing, the tabs were across the top, where on mine, the tabs are down the side. A lot of the reason I do that is, obviously, if I put several resources in there, I want the page, when they're viewing stuff, to be larger, more area that's visible in there. Now, like what I've done here is, I've got where you can find information about me as a person, then my background there basically gives you my education, my resume. Discovery Education stuff shows you all the stuff I've done with Discovery Education, whether it's presentations through WebExes, my Guru presentations, so on and so forth. Lodi, resources on the levels of teaching innovation, who I do stuff with Dr. Chris Marsh. There's presentations, and I know I need to go back and update a bunch of this. But you'll see here on presentations, and I'm glad you clicked on this, this is kind of my shortcut, and trust me, I've got a lot of updating on presentations to do here. But what I've done is I just took a table in the LiveBinder and put in links that I could click on that'll actually jump out. So that way, it's almost like an index. Or if you think about some web pages, when you click on the link on the left-hand side, it shows up on the right, obviously like we're doing in the binder. Well, that's what I've kind of done here is I've just taken these texts and made them that way. So those are one thing. If you go back to Discovery Ed, this is something I want to point out. So those of you that are new to LiveBinders, notice how this one comes up and says click on the thumbnail. Understand that you don't have to, but I just was wanting them to understand this picture. Understand that this is not that you've done something wrong, but this means these type of websites are not iframe friendly. So what I'm actually going to go back and do is I'm going to go take a screenshot of the website, put it in here with a link out to that resource. That way they don't go in this and go, well, that link's no good. So that is something to keep in mind when you're working with your own binders, whether it's just to share resources or if it's truly for an ePortfolio, is you got to stop and think, okay, I understand why it looks like this, but somebody out there that's reviewing my stuff may not truly understand it. So that's why I'll probably go back and take a screenshot image and then put the link to the side and say, to go see this, click here, or use this link to go view this.
Yeah, you bring up some good points for our first-time users about what a binder can do. A binder can actually embed web pages inside the frame. So it's not like your wiki page where you click on the link and then it goes to that page. You're actually sitting in the binder viewing websites.
My first tab, it'll go there.
Oh, okay. So here is aboutme.com or about.me for Dean Mantz. This is his web page. I can view his web page within the binder, so I'm never leaving the context of the binder, which if you have, whether you have young kids in lower school or you have high school kids who are easily distracted, you can keep them engaged in the context of the binder without having them leave all their assignments and go to another web page. You can actually keep it all active in here. And we do have some really great binder examples of that. There's, for example, an Arctic web quest, which is really fun for the lower grades. So the kids actually go and do some web exploration, but they never leave the binder. They do all of it through the binder. Visit video sites, visit interactive National Geographic sites, but it's all within the binder.
Hey, would you go click on the resource postings? I was just trying to think of something.
Okay.
Now what you see here is, obviously I put text in there, so it's just like Peggy kind of made a comment. I probably ought to go back in and put a visual in there. So for example, when Tina was showing everybody the student example of mine where she had the blog post and down at the bottom was her ePortfolio that supported everything that she put in that blog post, you'll notice that and I don't know if you walked through with that binder, but if you had, you'll notice that when you clicked on each tab, she uploaded a picture and then used the sub-tabs for the resources underneath that category. So that goes right back to like what Peggy was saying, is putting that image there so they can, it just deepens the look of that portfolio.
Yeah, we've got some examples of that. Should I try to go? Who does it really good? Oh, the history binders are a really good example of that. Let me just, should I try to go there, Dean?
Sure, that's fine. And yes, Debbie, we've done some webinars before where we actually showed some real web quests where each tab was the different phase of a web quest. Your introduction, your objectives, here's the handouts, and then it got right into it. Task 1, Task 2, Task 3. Yep, that's it right there, the Arctic web quest.
Yeah. So here's one where the video is, you could embed YouTube videos, the links don't embed it in an iframe, and this is an old binder, but if she had embedded it, it would have shown up here. And then what's great is she's also put teacher resources. So if you use Rubistar or any other third-party site for a curriculum, you can log into it from the binder, and you can grab what you need, print it out. She's got some TeacherTube resources here. She's got an evaluation tab, what you should be looking for. So it's a really nice clean-looking binder for an Arctic web quest. Here's one. Here's a student project on the time period. They were asked to reflect on the 40s. So each tab reflects something different from the 1940s. You can see how you've got this American Best History website in here. She's got, they had to pick like a popular book at that time, so in one sub-tab she's reflecting on the book. And then here you can go directly to the author's book page. And here you've got music. She's found a website about music in the 1940s. She's written down the lyrics, given some more websites. Let's see, what else do we have here that's pretty interesting? Here's a fun one. If you've ever done the Big Trip project, we used to have to do this, go to the library, look at all the travel information going to a travel agency. Well, you can do this all online. So here was a trip to India that a student did. This was her project. I don't have the teacher's template, but she created a template binder giving them all the resources that they could work with, and then the students were to go off, use that binder, and create their own. So she's got pricing from Expedia. She's got hotel information that she's uploaded with a little story next to it. So there's journal entries and then images that she's loaded or a video loaded to the left here. It's not loading. It's probably a video file. And then her daily journal. So this is an English portfolio that an English teacher has been using for quite a number of years now. Instructions about the kids writing about themselves. They copy this binder and then they fill in the rest. And then she connects to her wiki page. So anything that she's updating in her wiki page will get shown in the binder. So instead of sending a whole bunch of different wiki page links, she can organize it all in a binder and the kids can have access to it very, very easily in one place. So you can see here, oops. I don't know what I clicked on there, but I knocked myself out. My learning portfolio. So here's a learning, so this is, you talk about process, here's a binder on her processes. What are her reading activities, extensive reading, what are her tasks. I think I want to show you, since some of you are so new to livebinders, I want to take you to some binders that have really fun content in them. Well, this one here, Tech with Tia, Latia was going to speak to us today about ePortfolios. She's a technology specialist, but she couldn't make it. But she has some great stuff in here. One of my favorite is it's like a 3D game environment that teaches you how to be prepared for natural disasters. And it's highly interactive. It is really like playing a game, but you're sitting inside of this binder, creating you know, a real-world scenario. So I think I played with one where a hurricane was about to come in the next 10 minutes. So you have to make these decisions about you know, how are you going to defend the citizens? Are you going to set up the hospital? Where are you going to have people go? It's pretty interesting. And while you're building the binder, you can almost have instructions written on the left or right of this web page telling the kids what they need to do. I won't go into it there, but it's just reflecting to you all the kinds of stuff that you can do in a binder when you're linking web pages. Where is I'm trying to find the history one. That's pretty cool. Oh, here, let me take a look at this particular shelf. Oh, here's one on Lincoln. Talk about working together as a group trying to build a binder. This is about point in time in the Lincoln administration. So here you're putting all kinds of activities. Here's your reading list, helpful links. It could be a website that you're reading about, or you can, write your own notes. So here's an all-in-one interactive multimedia binder on everything the students need to know for this particular subject. And there's that YouTube video. Here's some exploratory items that they've put as HTML on the page. Let me get one. Let's see. Here's organizing by chapter, your notes. So if you've ever practiced flipped learning, this is one way to get lecture material to a student. You record on a video and then you upload it into a binder. And the kids can view the binder as many times as they need in order to get the point across. No one has to see them reviewing material 10, 20 times if they have to. So this one looks like it's a binder full of video files. And here's one linking to Khan Academy. Oh, let me go back here. Is this the one that I was looking at? Oh wait, there's M. Thornton. Oh, this one I love. This one's using third-party content, so if you are using science journals online, you can break down the chapters and lab sections into different tabs. So, and here's where you can write instructions for the students to view their lecture. Oh, this one doesn't. Is this the one? There's one where you can actually click on the digestive system. I don't think this one's it, though. No, there's one that's highly interactive. You click on the different organs and they highlight and they tell you the name. It's pretty cool. Oh, there's so many other ones here. I can't see if anybody has any questions. Oh, this one's over there.
There aren't any questions. We're actually running out of time.
Oh, okay. Well, let me close this off then. Okay, so if you guys want to see some more binders and really take a look at how different teachers are using them with their students as ePortfolios or curriculum in the classroom, I'll try to add some more binders. Since many of you are new to livebinders, you'll probably want to see more examples of what you can do with them, so I'll try to add that to the binder. And then it's the same binder giveaway. If you're interested, if you're going to the ISTE conference in San Antonio, there is a workshop on how to create binders by Joan and Janet at J2 Training. So it's a fun conference, and they're there to help you get started on live binders. Mike Fisher, who was just on the webinar with Janet Hale, has just finished a book called Upgrade Your Curriculum. They talk a lot about using digital technology in the classroom, how to use live binders for projects and ePortfolios. It's a great book. I recommend that you take a look at that if you want to upgrade your curriculum to the digital format. And then I want to give a special thanks again to Classroom 2.0 and Steve Hargadon Without them, we wouldn't be able to do our sessions once a month on Classroom 2 Live and their Blackboard Collaborate. So thank you, Kim, Lorna, and thank you, Peggy, for all your help with that. And then I think when we close out here, this is our contact. If you guys have any questions, if you don't already know it, you can talk to Dana, Barbara, and I at support@livebinders.com. We love your questions, so please do not hesitate. And then I need to remind you that when you close out of the session tonight, the Classroom 2.0 survey will pop up, and that is not for us. So please ignore that survey. If you would like to receive a professional development certificate for today's hour, you can go to the binder and click on the Professional Development tab, or you can click here with this bit.ly link, and we will have you fill out a survey there, and then we can send you a professional development certificate from the knowledge sharing place. So again, I hope this was informative for everyone. I want to thank Mike for stepping in, and for Dean for taking the time on your busy schedule to come in and help share a little bit about what ePortfolios are all about. And I want to thank all of you guys for coming and spending your Wednesday evening with us. Thank you so much, and have a great evening.